Hi, you're watching Channel APA, and my name is Annabel Park. Um, it's a documentary called 9500 Liberty, and it takes place in Prince William County, Virginia, which is a suburb of DC, in 2007 and 8, when they pass a law that's very similar to the law that just passed in Arizona regarding immigration. The law forced the police to look for people who looked illegal and check for documentation status. Well, it was a situation where, like what we're seeing with Arizona, there's just a lot of news coverage about it. So you're reading about it, but then there are things that just don't add up, they don't make sense. And, Prince William County is very close to where I live. Eric Byler, my partner, lives there. And so we decided to just take the camera and start investigating. Yeah, I mean, it came out of kind of what we saw was a need in the county for people to get information like as soon as possible. Because most feature documentaries, like filmmakers put together the information. It takes them months to edit, months to get into festivals, and so it takes like a year or more to go from shooting to sharing. And we felt like the situation really required community members to find out what was really going on. There was a lack of information. There was a climate of misinformation. So we didn't feel right just holding on to all this footage, not sharing it. And so we created this YouTube channel just to not only get information out, but to really start dialogue in the community, because that was desperately needed. People were screaming and shouting at each other. There was a lot of emotion, a lot of rhetoric, but very little just discussion, very little fact finding. So we were trying to remedy that with by putting it on YouTube and creating kind of a virtual town hall, because you can make comments and people can communicate directly with us and say, can you do this or can you do this, or in some cases become characters in our story. So. I think we got featured by YouTube with our first, like, the actual, we were actually featured on the homepage with, I think, our first or second video. And so the video went viral, and then it became news, local news. And Washington Post reporter decided to do a story about us. And so we became kind of like media figures during the debate. So then people started following us. Then we kind of had a bunch of subscribers, and it just kind of expanded. Yeah. I mean, I think they're just, to me, they're different forms of storytelling. How do you get your story out? And it used to be that we're completely dependent on reporters, and editors who made decisions about what people can find out. And because of social media and internet, it's much more democratic, and anyone can write a blog or Twitter or Facebook to start to get information out, or just to speak up. So it's much more democratic. So it's, that's really, to me, the difference is that we're now looking at different distribution formats, where really anyone can be part of that process. So all these sort of barriers are kind of gone, like the barrier between the reader of a newspaper versus the writer or the reporter or the editor. I mean, all those lines are being blurred. So I think it's like a really fascinating moment, but it also invites a lot of, I guess, abuses of the tools. Meaning, if you become popular, you get influential, but there's no accountability. On a blog, you can pretty much say whatever you want, and it's not like you can write a letter to the editor and there's a correction the next day. So anything goes, and people read blogs thinking they're reading, almost like they're reading newspapers, like it's an authoritative source of information, when often it's just whatever someone decided to write from their basement. And so there's no real accountability, and I guess that's where you see kind of threats to our whole political process, because if things just get thrown up and people start believing that this is information, when sometimes they're just, it's like they're deliberate misinformation or just rumors, and you can create hysteria pretty quickly. And it's viral, it goes viral. Yeah, and the thing is, when we asked him about, how he felt about how provocative his blog is, he's like, yeah, it's meant to be fun, meant to be entertaining, And he wore a different hat as president of Help Save Manassas, this grassroots civic group that advocated for this policy, and he, was like very responsible and had a very kind of cleaned up rhetoric about immigration, more or less. But on a blog, just like it was like anything goes. And that's sort of the problem, like what is the norm is, to me, not very constructive on a lot of these blogs when people are blogging anonymously. So there's a kind of degeneration of civility on the blogs that really concerns me. No accountability, the lack of civility. I think that we had this structured way of getting and receiving information, that was like, there were people who were authorized to give information, and then the rest of us who received the information. And that barrier has totally broken down, and now we're more like a bee colony, so we're constantly sending signals to one another. Everyone is communicating. You're every day communicating by being part of Facebook or Twitter, or just even by email, you're sending things out. So we're all consuming and distributing information right now, and so I think there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, a lot of power that comes with that. So I think what our film shows is that really anyone can jump in and take on that responsibility, to get the facts out, to take part in the conversation in a responsible way. And we're asking people to be responsible, even though we're not reporters per se. We need to we need to commit to truth telling, not just winning fights, and hopefully that would go viral, that idea that as citizens we have to take on that responsibility and be focused and committed to the truth. Because if we're oriented towards finding the truth, then I think we're going to have much better political outcome, instead of being in it to win a fight. If you're in it to win a fight, we're not going to have a good outcome. Well, we're in theatrical release right now. We opened in Phoenix and had a 6-week run, and we also showed in a bunch of other cities in Arizona, and we opened in San Francisco and Berkeley this weekend, and I think there are about 13 cities to follow. So we're doing a theatrical run. We're going to eventually be on cable, hopefully DVDs, internet, all those formats. But I'm hoping eventually we're going to have a bunch of house parties where people can come together, watch it, have discussions, and I'm really looking forward to that, because I want the film to be kind of a starting point for constructive conversation about immigration, which is something we need to have. Well, I'm in the middle of something called the Coffee Party Movement. I don't know if Eric already talked about it or not, but the Coffee Party Movement started kind of by accident at the end of January in reaction to just the ugliness of the healthcare debate and how protracted that was, and this kind of growing sense that somehow the Tea Party was not only gaining influence, but it represented America. I just really disagree with that, and I really felt like we needed a counterbalance to the Tea Party. I wanted to kind of create an alternative to that kind of engagement, which is in many ways effective, very theatrical, very provocative kind of engagement, and have a model engagement that's about civility in political discourse and cooperation in government. You know, and just that very simple message. And I just created a Facebook fan page saying, let's try to start this movement, and it just exploded. And now we have one of the biggest political groups on Facebook. And we have local chapters like across the country, including some really powerful ones in California. So it's just an opportunity, I think, for people to be part of a very positive movement that actually tries to bring people together, as opposed to using, what I think are fear tactics. This is based on the principle that as Americans we have things in common, and we have to start from there, and we have to insist on civility, and we have to insist on looking for facts instead of being satisfied with rhetoric. The website for the film is 9500liberty.com, and for the coffee party, it's coffeepartyusa.com. And we're most active on Facebook, facebook.com/coffeeparty. And I started a project that I had to kind of put on hold, which was about the controversy over military bases in Okinawa. So I actually shot a lot of footage in Okinawa last December, and hoping to refocus on that and other issues related to basically unresolved issues from the war in Asia. So that's an ongoing project. I have a lot shot in regard to the comfort women issue. So Okinawa is like part of that project. And I'm sure eventually I'm going to be looking at other issues related to the war, like Hiroshima and Nanking. And there's so many issues that we haven't, I think, productively reflected on and talked about. And I think it's very difficult for us to have stability in Asia without having that dialogue, without being able to think about the war, come to an agreement about what actually happened during the war, have a kind of truth and reconciliation. And then I think that would provide a much more solid foundation for peace in Asia. And we're seeing that all those repercussions from not dealing with it right now, conflict in North Korea, is related to the war. Okinawa, we're having turmoil in between U.S. and Japan because of what's happening in Okinawa. So these are things that and it's all to me connected to 9500 Liberty, in that there is a way for us to deal with conflict. There's a way for us to heal from wars and conflict. There's a way for us to come together, using our common humanity. Instead of saying we're too different and we're always going to be locked in a fight with each other. I don't believe that, but that's kind of, I think, the paradigm that is most often used to deal with politics. But we need a paradigm that's much more focused on cooperation and resolution.